Good evening. This is Don Raines. I'm the chair of Triangle J, Board of Delegates. If you could mute your sound unless you are speaking, that way the speaker will have full attention of everyone. The meeting is being recorded, and we welcome everybody that is here tonight. There will be a roll call vote on all issues that are voted, and Elena will be handling the roll call vote. And we have a great program tonight, and we're going to try to stay in the a 2-hour time slot. It got carried on a little longer than 2 hours last meeting in April, but I thought it was very important to have the roundtable of all the local governments, and we shared a lot of good information. So again, this meeting is being recorded, and Elena, if you're ready for the roll call.
Yep, thank you. So on your screen are the instructions. I'm just going to remind everyone of them, so they're a little different than we were previously doing. I'm going to go in alphabetical order through the local governments, and when your local government is called, please state your name. If both the delegate and the alternate are on the call, please have the delegate go first. So I will start with Aberdeen.
Will Mullaney, Aberdeen.
Thank you, Wilma. Andrew. Apex.
Brett Gant.
Thank you. Archer Lodge.
Mark Wilson, Archer Lodge.
Thank you, Mark. Benson.
Jerry is here. I saw him earlier in our virtual.
Me too. So I'll come back. Broadway.
Thomas Beal, Broadway.
Thank you. Cameron. Marlboro.
Again, if you could mute if you're not the person that is doing the roll call and answering the roll call.
Thanks, Chair. Carrie. Chapel Hill. Chatham County. Clayton. City of Durham. Durham County. Fuquay Varina.
Larry Smith, Fuquay Varina.
Garner.
Ken Marshburn, Garner here.
Thank you, Ken. Bolton. Hillsborough.
Kathleen Ferguson, Hillsborough.
Thank you. Holly Springs.
Sean McGrath, Holly Springs.
Thank you very much. Johnson County. Kenley. Nightdale. Lee County.
Kirk Smith, Lee County.
Thank you. Micro. Moore County. Morrisville.
Steve Rao.
Orange County, Pine Level, Pinehurst, Pittsburgh, Princeton,
Jerry Miller here.
Don Rains.
Got you there. Thank you, Don. I also have, I got you down, Mary Medlin. Thank you. Raleigh, Robbins, Rollsville,
Ronnie Kern, present.
Sanford,
Rebecca Whitehoff Salmon, City of Sanford.
thank you. Selma,
Byron McAllister, Selma.
Siler City, Smithfield, Southern Pines, Bath, Wake County,
Susan Evans here.
thank you. Wake Forest, Wendell,
Joe DeLoach is here.
Wilson Mills,
David McCowan.
and Zebulon. Great. So I know there's a few folks that have joined since I have done roll call. If you don't mind speaking out your name, and I will mark you down.
Bob Smith, Anger.
Deidreana Freeman, Durham.
Jennifer Robinson, Carrie.
Perfect. Thank you all. We have a quorum.
That's great. We got a lot of important information to go over. And first is we have a great speaker from last year from RDU Airport Authority, who's going to give the annual outlook, Michael Landreth. And Elena, if you've got any additional information you want to share.
Yeah, I would just, we're really excited to have the RDU Airport Authority joining us tonight. For many of you, you'll remember that this was discussed a little bit earlier in the meeting. Around this time last year, Michael joined us to talk about the airport, and the outlook looked a little bit different than it thankfully does. I think I haven't seen everything he's going to say, but I think we can all imagine that it looks a little bit better right now than it did a year ago. So we're really excited. He's just going to give you an update about the airport and aviation in general. So I will happily turn it over to you, Michael.
All right, well, good evening. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and the entire staff. I appreciate the opportunity to give the Triangle J Council of Governments a little bit of update of what's going on at RDU. And if you remember last year, it was May timeframe, we were down significantly in terms of total traffic. So much better news today that we'll kind of talk about. So what I thought I'd do is kind of share with you the state of RDU, kind of how did we recover over this past 12 months. Talked a little bit about our new travel experience, so what you should expect when you come to the facility itself. And there is still a federal requirement to actually wear a mask once you come onto our property. So if you're at Sheets or you're in the terminal, you're standing on the curb, you're required to wear a mask. That's a federal requirement. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit. Then a little bit about our forecast as we look to the future. What does the future look like in terms of recovery, getting back to that 2019 level? And that was really our high watermark in terms of total number of customers. And so you'll hear me reference 2019 a lot because that was the highest point of traffic activity we had here at RDU since our history. Then we'll talk about our financial outlook. It looked pretty dim last year, but it's looking even better as we move forward for the upcoming years. But still have a little ways to go. So we'll kind of share some of the challenges we have ahead of us. And then a little bit about the counseling engagement, some things you might be able to do to help support the Airport Authority in our local community. And also up in Washington, D.C., your voice up in Washington, D.C. can be very powerful, influencing agencies like the Federal Aviation Administration, which will be asking you to try to do that, try to help us get our fair share of those federal dollars to help pay for critical infrastructure. And then I'll try to get into any type of questions or comments you might have for the authority. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with kind of the state of RDU. So this is kind of our economic impact. This was a report that was done by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, Division of Aviation. This was 2019 data. The report was published in 2020. It said RDU has a $15.1 billion a year economic impact, supports almost 100,000 jobs, and generates about $518 million for the state and local taxes. So you can clearly see a strong economic driver for our local community. And also it's a great magnet for companies. So companies like the Apples of the world, the Googles of the world that sell their products not only in the local state, but also the United States, but all over the world. They have an airport where they can connect and sell those products, goods, and services all over the world. So a little bit about our economic impact. A little bit about what January 2020, I tell you, when 2020 started, we were very excited about the year. You can see the hustle and bustle for these pictures of what it looked like, and boy, it really fell off pretty hard. So this is April 2020. We really went from rapid growth in terms of total employments and total customers and looking to add new service into the market to losing 96% of our customers. It was really very challenging times, and we really weren't quite sure what the recovery path was going to look like because it was truly dependent upon, getting shots in the arms, getting those vaccines in place. And as we started to see the vaccines come in place, we started to see recovery. We predicted we would do about 15 million total customers. To put that in perspective, I think the population of the entire state of North Carolina is 13 or 14 million. So we were predicting to push more people than there are in the state of North Carolina through our facility. What really happened is we only pushed about 4.9 million. And really in the first 2 months of the year, we pushed about 2 million and some change. And so we only did about 2.5 million additional customers over the next 10 months. It was very, very depressed. And over the year 2020, calendar year, we were down by 66% for the year. We started to see some little spiking that occurred. So anytime we had a holiday, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, anytime we had a holiday, we saw a little bit of spike in activity. We saw a pretty good spike at the end of the year during the Christmas holiday and New Year's of about 53%, when we were really trending at about 30% of where we were in 2020 for most of the year. So we were very, very excited to see a little bit of uptick at the end of the year. We started with 57 different nonstop destinations and 5 international from 2019 into early 2020, and we went as low as 25 and 0. So we had lost, 25 plus markets, lost all of our international service. We've been able to claw our way back, and so we're now about 37 to 38 by 2. And so we're slowly starting to build that network back as a result of those customers disappearing. This is kind of what it looks like today. These are the nonstop destinations, again, 38 by 2 as of May 2021. We're continuing to talk to those carriers. Everybody's pretty optimistic. You only have to look at the local newspaper, the local news stations about all the great news that's occurred here, Google and Apple, and that's in 2021. And as I've talked to the local economic development partners, all of them told me that their recruitment in 2020 was a record year, and 2021 is on a level that looks even stronger than what happened in 2020. So we're fairly confident we're going to return to not only the 57 and 5, but we'll continue to grow those nonstop destinations, and we truly believe we'll get that international service back. The million-dollar question is exactly when will that occur? And I think your crystal ball is probably as good as mine in terms of what that looks like. Again, I think the confidence in customers getting shots in the arms is what's going to drive recovery. Something that was very interesting in November of 2020, the very end of the year before the holiday, we only sat at about 30% of where we were in 2019. But this is all the service that started to come back. JetBlue, all those destinations that are highlighted, JetBlue only had 3 nonstop destinations in 2019. They added 12 new nonstop destinations when we were only at 30%. Sun Country Airlines added a brand new carrier into the market to a destination we had service to provide a competition. And of course, the rest of these destinations simply represent service that we had lost that we had actually come back and returned. And people ask me all the time, why do you think this occurred when you were down by almost 70%? Why do you think these airlines are making an investment? And I think they were making an investment because of the growth of this community and what we see. The strength of our community is truly those universities we have and the talent they're producing, but also the quality of life and the great decisions that folks like you as elected officials have made to make this to be a very desirable place for people who want to live, play, and work. And so the airlines have started to make an investment and they're making a risk, even though the traffic hasn't fully returned. That is a very good story for this community and a good indication of what they see coming in the future. This kind of shows you a little bit about what my market mix looked like. So pre-COVID, the left-hand side of the screen, it was 50-50. So 50% business, 50% leisure. Look on the right-hand side, that's kind of where we're at right now. Kind of this post-COVID, it's probably an 80-20 split. There is quite a bit of conversation in the industry itself, how much of that business traveler will actually come back. Listen to Bill Gates. Bill Gates sells Microsoft, I get it. He believes only 50% of that customer base that was business will come back. I think it's going to be higher than that. Maybe it's 75 to 80% of where we were before. But remember, the overall number of business customers that we have has grown pretty substantially over the past 18 months with all these new announcements and new people that are moving in with their new businesses in our local community. So we still think we're going to do quite well. And I think we will not only meet 2019 numbers at some point in the future, but I think we're going to exceed those numbers. And we need to make sure we have the infrastructure in place to support that continued growth. Now, a little bit about the new travel experience, because it is a little bit different. As part of the pandemic, we instituted what we call Fly Confident, Fly RDU campaign. It was an educational campaign to really communicate with the community all the great things we were doing to ensure that you could be safe when you flew through the facility. So for example, you see the acrylic plexiglass between our customer service representative and you as a guest or a customer. Wearing masks. Masks are required in the facility. The federal government, the President of the United States, has issued an executive order. You're required to wear a mask through the entire experience, on the curb, through the checkpoint, on the airplane. When you get off in baggage claim, the entire experience, you're required to wear a mask. We also have put stickers on the ground regarding social distancing. We also reallocated some resources. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that's what we call our terminal operations team. This is a team that's gone around and looked to ensure the contractor that's doing the cleaning under these new COVID requirements is doing it to the standards we've established to meet CDC requirements. So we've got very good clean facilities, clean bathrooms, and also making sure people are wearing masks, and also helping customers as we try to sort people back through the checkpoint as we're trying to maintain social distancing. Those lines are kind of extending out a little bit. And so these folks that work for us are trying to help our customers navigate their way through. If you go to rdu.com, you'll see this be the splash page that comes up. Just click on that. All the information that I communicated to you is there again and available so you can read it, so you can feel comfortable when you come through RDU. And we also have a video that we developed that will walk you through from the garage all the way through this entire experience so you can see exactly what to expect as you come through our facilities. A couple other things we did from a parking standpoint, if you weren't familiar with this, we had instituted an online reservation system at parkrdu.com. You can book 24 hours in advance. A lot of people have asked me, well, Mike, why don't you reduce that to a shorter period of time? And the reason why is we need some time to be able to make sure we have the space available. If you make the booking, you need to make sure the actual stall is available. We also have license plate recognition technology. So if you actually load your license plate into the reservation, when you pull up to the gate, we'll recognize you and welcome you. You don't even have to roll your window down. We'll know that you've already paid. It'll open the gate. You can drive in. And when you leave, that same technology, if you provide us the license plate, we'll recognize it. It'll pop the gate. You don't even have to roll your window down. And we'll send you an email receipt that says this is the transaction. And of course, we'll thank you for your customer service or your customer using our parking operations. Also on the concourse, everybody's going contactless. You can see the picture in the top left, either using contactless payment or using QR codes to be able to pull up menus and those types of things. So again, trying to make it as contactless as possible for our customers. And of course, we've added a new travel tool. It's called Travel Smart. And so if you look at the picture at the bottom left, if you go to our website at rdu.com, look at travel requirements, you'll have a drop-down screen and you'll be able to click on this map. You can see the map in that computer. Basically what we've done is we partner with a company over in Europe that collects COVID data in terms of What are the testing and quarantine requirements? What's the status of restaurants and businesses? What about local regulations? So you can literally go there and click on any of the United States, any of the states in the United States, and any country in the world if you want to understand and be able to travel smart. So team did a nice job. We're the first airport in the world that has deployed this. A lot of the airlines have bought this software and put it in place before we did, but we wanted to make sure that you could travel with confidence. Also want to remind everybody, there was a couple reports that were done by Harvard School of Public Health. One looked at the safety coming from the curb to the jet bridge, which is really the terminal experience. And then also they looked at on board, and what they concluded is both those two scenarios regarding the protocols we put into place and wearing a mask is just as safe as going to the grocery store as it is to flying on board an airplane. And what we clearly saw through COVID is we did not see widespread transmission of COVID-19 as a result of traveling. Even though CDC was trying to frown upon traveling, it wasn't the travel experience after we put these protocols in place, is really what people did once they got to those destinations. So again, trying to ensure that you can travel smart, you can travel safe through RDU by putting these types of things in place. So now let's transition and talk a little bit about the forecast. So a little bit of a busy screen here, but if you look at the very bottom is the kind of the calendar. So January 21 through March 22. The blue line represents what we thought was our original forecast. The gray line represents an update, so what we think that the employment levels are going to wind up looking like. And the black lines right here represent actual numbers. So you can see when we started in January 2021, we were actually below what our forecast was. But you remember, we started to get shots in the arms. So as we started to get shots in the arms, this has really kind of changed what this has started to look like. So, originally in our fiscal year, which is in April 1 through March 31st, we thought we might do about 3.6 million in plane passenger. And in plane passenger, somebody who comes through the front door. A deplane passenger, somebody that comes off the airplane. Enplanements plus deplanements equals total customers. So our enplanements, we thought we'd do about 3.6. Right now, the latest update is about 4.7. That's a growth of about 1 million customers. But to put that in perspective, when we did about 14.2 or 7.1 million in plane passengers in 2019, you can see we're still about 50% off of where we were before. Put that in perspective, this year's budget is about 2 million in plane passengers. When we were putting the budget together, it was in October, November, December of 2020. So we did not have very high hopes. As we got around to April 1, we updated that forecast to about 3.6, now updated about 4.6, but you can still see we're still off pretty significantly in comparison to where we were in that 2019 timeframe. When you kind of run this out, it looks like it's about 2025 before we reach our 2019 levels. So that means it's almost a 5-year span before we think we probably exceed where we're in 2019. But if you continue to look to your right, it looks like there's still some continued growth that's going to occur. And I think these numbers may be underestimating what's going to happen in our local community because of all the great recruitment, some of these great companies, and people wanting to live in our community as well. I think it's going to continue to drive that traffic. But again, as we get back on firmer footing and we get more stabilized traffic, not just the spiking from leisure traffic, but actually business customers come back, we'll be able to revise that forecast and probably have a little bit better estimate of what that's going to look like. Now let's talk a little bit about the financial outlook and what that kind of looked like. First, share with you this is a pie chart of how we kind of make our money at the end of the day. So you look at parking, 26%, terminal, 17%. I want you to look at this little wedge at the top left, says federal and state grants really only represented about 10% of our total income to run our operations in 2019, 2020. That's prior to pandemic. So look what happened during the year of pandemic. We really relied on Uncle Sam pretty significantly. We took about a $300 million program. We cut it in half. We reduced it by $150 million. We were very fortunate. We got about $49 million from the federal government. We got another $17 million from the state. And we used all that money to pay for the debt service, which is about $40 million that we owed. And then we also used that to pay for staff. I'm happy to report we did not have to lay off any of our employees through this process. And it was very challenging as we move forward, as we looked at this income stream just literally die on us. And so we're very thankful to what the federal government, state government did to kind of step in and try to help us out. As we move to the current year, you can see that that is a much smaller portion. We still have one more round of CARES Act funding. It's it's Carissa. I can't remember all the acronyms. There's 3 different programs that came out, but the last one is about another $49 million that we will use again to shore up, because the total revenue is not in yet, to really pay for the debt service and again to pay for staff to make sure we can start spooling up and getting the employees that are needed to try to get ahead of the surge of customers coming back into the facility itself. So a little bit about what that's starting to look like, but again, did rely heavily on federal government, state government to try to work our way through this as we fought through a very difficult time financially. From a capital program standpoint, we had a program called Vision 2040. That was really a 25-year capital plan. In 2019, we had already reached our 2032 passenger levels, and we anticipate in the next 2 years, we would have reached 2040. I will tell you that 4.9 million customers translates into about 1987 was the last time we had that low of an activity. But as we're starting to move forward, we're anticipating this year that we are going to trigger the first half of our Vision 2040 plan, and we anticipate that we're going to need to make an investment of about $1.8 billion. That $1.8 billion kind of breaks down like this. Largest chunk is going to be a runway, $366 million for a runway and replacing the primary taxiway on the west side of the airport is what we call 5 left, 2, 3 right. We're also going to have to rehab the east runway, which we call 5 right, 2, 3 left. That's going to have to be rehabbed, about $117 million, another $213 million of apron and taxi work. So apron is where an airplane sits when you get on board the airplane, and a taxiway is what you use. It's like a street that gets to the interstate being the runway at the end of the day. And another $100 million for the airfield projects. Ron refers to remain overnight. During 2019, we were in the process of building a very large ramp. At nighttime in 2019, every gate was occupied by an airplane. Every gate was occupied by an airplane, and we had another 20 airplanes off those gates sitting on what we call hard stands on what we call remain overnight areas. We're building a much larger area to house even more airplanes in 2019, and we think that program will wind up coming back and surfacing. We also think there's probably a terminal expansion. In February of 2020, we were in the process of taking to the board in March it was about a 12 to 13 gate expansion over Terminal 1. We were literally minutes away getting board approval to implement that because we were so far behind in terms of capacity. That looks like that is now in play again and will need to be funded before 2030 as we move forward. And of course, another 0.3 or almost $300 million of just general land side. If you remember in 2019, especially during thunderstorm season, when we had delays, aircraft were holding till the storms could clear out. We had multiples coming at the same time. We had lots of roadway congestion that stacked up and worked itself back around from Terminal 2 to Terminal 1. So we need to do some roadway improvements as well to make sure that we don't have those congestion points as we start this return. The challenge we're going to wind up facing is, this is about a $794 million program that we think we can wind up funding from our cash reserves and future revenue that we wind up generating. We're going to have to probably take on another $500 million worth of debt. Right now, we're just under about $500 million worth of existing debt. So you're going to go from 550 plus million to almost $1 billion worth of debt that we will probably have on the books, probably by 2025, 2026, sometime in that time frame. So quite a bit of debt that we'll wind up having on the books as we kind of move forward. Still looks like we're going to be short by almost $500 million worth of money as we kind of move forward. And that's going to be challenging. And I think the other thing that's going to be challenging to us is that's if we just maintain status quo through 2030. So as long as we don't recruit any more companies or encourage any more people to move to the community, which I know that's not going to be the case, we won't trigger an additional $1.8 billion for almost a $3.6 to $3.7 billion. I anticipate next 36 months, I think that second round, that additional 1.8 could come in play, which is going to trigger a whole host of additional projects that will come in play. That would be very challenging to try to figure out. We're already about $500 million in the hole. How do you fund the rest of that program? It becomes very challenging how you do that. From a federal funding standpoint, we've had lots of conversations for years with the Federal Aviation Administration, and we have requested $275 million to help fund the FAA's portion, or 75%. I will tell you those conversations are not going very well. I think the last conversation we had is They thought they might be able to come up with about $20 million. A little bit about where these funds come from. They come from you. So you as people that fly through RDU, you pay a tax. That 7.5% sales tax goes into a trust fund. I then show up and ask for a grant coming back to us. And I will tell you, our community gets about 6 cents on the dollar. Smaller communities across the country get probably $1 to $1.25. So every dollar that they put in, they get $1.25 back. Some of the large hubs across the country probably get 15 to 18 cents. So we are not getting our fair share, and it's going to require us to get vocal up in Washington, D.C. with the Federal Aviation Administration saying we need our fair share. To defend them a little bit, there is a significant challenge. Airports across the country need about $25 billion a year to fund their program from a federal investment standpoint. And right now we're investing about $4 billion a year. So you can see there is a huge national gap in this space on an annual basis. But again, we need to stand up for and get what we've been paying into the system for an extended period of time. We need to get our fair share. If that doesn't work, that means we're going to have to get a lot more aggressive in terms of airlines rates and charges. And when you have an airline like Delta Airlines that has lost about $12.7 billion, it's very difficult to go back to Delta and say, hey, we're going to have to really raise your rates significantly in order for us to make these types of investments. It's almost a deal killer for that carrier wanting to add any more service or continue some of the service they may actually have. We can defer some of this capacity growth, but when we defer things, it means that lines are going to be a lot longer and you're going to have a lot longer time to try to get through the system. We've tried at a federal level to get a passenger facility charge increase. That is a federal program that is controlled by the federal government. The airports across this country have been trying to get that approved for 20 years. And we can't even get a dollar increase in this. Really, the folks that are opposing it are the airlines. And the airlines have continued to communicate with elected officials in DC that if they raised it by $1, it would totally implode their business model and nobody would want to fly, but yet they put bag fees in at $25 each way. So we're not quite sure how that logic works, but we haven't been able to convince them that this is the right way. This is a user fee. It's like going to the movie theater. You go in to see the movie, you get to come through the airport, you pay that fee, and it pays for critical infrastructure, but haven't had a lot of luck at the end of the day. So a little bit of a challenging environment. So what could the council do in their space and your leadership positions with all of your communities through the state of North Carolina? First of all, to recognize how large of an area that we actually serve here at RDU. So this is what we call our catchment area. Think of this like a big net. So we throw our big net out. That red line really represents where the majority of our customers actually come from. So if you look at that, it's almost half the state of North Carolina. So if you run Greensboro down to Charlotte, all the way over Florence to Wilmington, all the way up into Virginia, that's really where our market is. So all the places and locations that you represent, that's where we get a lot of our customers. It is a large area of where these customers come from to actually fly through RDU. So as a council, you can help us advocate for federal funding. Let your voice be heard, and make sure that we get our fair share of federal funding. Because if we don't get our fair share of federal funding, how we pay for that is we've got to figure out a way to institute that in some sort of fee or charges. We either charge you, so parking rates have to go up, or concession fees have to go up. Something's got to pay for it, or we've got to drive expenses up to our customers. But you've already paid these taxes in. We're only looking for our fair share back. And again, the Federal Aviation Administration, that's the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, is very receptive to community feedback. Matter of fact, when a lot of community feedback comes back about you need to make an investment in airports, that's usually where they start diverting their time and attention and saying, hey, this is important to this community. We probably need to do something about it. But they need to hear they need to hear from our local community in terms of what's going on. So I'm encouraging you to write letters of support about the replacement of our runway. Again, it's a $275 million ask. But again, the more people that we can get from our local community that are up there, communicating with elected officials, communicating with the FAA about why this is important, and we're not asking for a handout, we're simply asking for our fair share. That's what's going to move the needle in Washington, D.C. for us to get our fair share of that funding. Because right now, the number is 20 million. It's just not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. You've paid far more money into that system than that. Also, looking for public support on issues that impact airport operations as we move forward. You know, we are going to continue to oppose residential development in some of these high noise areas. As we continue to grow, I think what you're going to see is continue to see encroachment that's going to occur, people wanting to build closer and closer and closer to the airport. A lot of that's driven from the fact that that's really what the available land that is left, but it does create some significant challenge for us as we move forward. As our community grows, it's going to be important we prevent incompatible land use in and around the airport, so we don't have people that are frustrated with the airport or want to try to find some ways to restrict the growth or the expansion or flights at certain times of the day. We don't want to do that. We want to try to make sure we plan long-term so we don't create conflicts in the future. A lot of times people ask me, is there an example somewhere across the country where somebody has done this well that we should replicate that? And what people will tell you across the country is they'll point to RDU, is that our airport overlay districts that we have in place have been very effective over the past 30 years, preventing these types of things from moving forward. But we're slowly starting to chip away at those things. And of course, that's going to create a problem. And where they're developing these things is one of the highest noise impacted areas of the entire triangle is where people want to do development. So again, just want to caution everybody. And as elected officials, you have the opportunity to make decisions in this space that could have a positive or negative impact on the airport in terms of our potential growth that drives businesses that want to relocate to our community. Council engagement also, we've got lots of different social media, and we have social media from Facebook to Twitter. These are some ways you get connected. Mary Griffith, who is here today with me, she does a lot of our outreach, and she's got an email address, telephone number, you can reach out to her. We've got lots of publications we put out as well on a monthly basis. You can stay up to date in terms of what we're doing, any new service, any changes in terms of what we're doing for food, beverage, or retail or parking. She's a great resource along with these different resources as well. Again, we want to try to keep you informed about what's going on. We'll hope you'll also advocate for us. Advocate in Washington, D.C. about how important it is to fund critical infrastructure. The airport improvement program, when it was put into place 40 plus years ago, the #1 priority was funding runways. So I find it difficult after we've been paying into a system for 40 years, all of a sudden there's insufficient money to pay for the #1 priority, but you can advocate. Again, Mary's email address is right there if you want to contact her and see how you might be able to help. We would appreciate the support. And again, those are your tax dollars that we're simply trying to get back to pay for infrastructure that you will use at the end of the day. And of course, we encourage community engagement to help us kind of move forward as an organization and make sure we're making some good decisions for our community as we move forward. So I think that is it. I might have timed out. I'm going to try to stop the sharing here if I can and try to see if anybody's got any questions. Did I stop it? I did. Okay, good. I was successful. Mr. Chairman or the board, does anybody have any questions for me?
We have a person raise their hand.
Okay.
Is that Butch?
Yeah, I have a question for you. This is Mark Wilson from Archer Lodge. You compared 87 to your status this past year, 2020. Was 87 due to Americans pull out?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure of that. That was just the number of passengers. The total number of passengers we had about 4.9. The last time we had 4.9 was in 87. I don't know if that was associated with the American pulling out or not. I don't remember. I was just trying to make a comparison. Is that was a long time ago when we were that low in terms of total number of customers. Great question.
They were trying to make a hub, weren't they?
They did, and then they dehubbed as well around that same general time. But you can see that we rebounded fairly well. And one of the great things that happened is we have 11 different airlines that are providing competition. And when they provide that competition, it helps keep your airfares down. And that's really what we want to do is if I can continue to add as many points in the map so you've got nonstop service, but also provide competition at the same time, that's the best of both worlds at the end of the day.
Yeah. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
David, do you want to?
Yes, I do. Michael, that was a great presentation. I have a quick couple of questions. My interests over the years have always been general aviation. So during the COVID crisis, was there a significant decline in the revenues that general aviation produces for RDU? And secondly, did during the crisis, did the general aviation usage decline? And if so, is it on the comeback at RDU? Thank you.
Yes, a lot of great questions there. So general aviation. So first of all, put in perspective, I think general aviation right now contributes about 1% of my total income. So it is a very, 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 very small. However, general aviation is an important element when you start looking at companies wanting to relocate here. Typically how they come in is their corporate officers come in through corporate aircraft. And so that general aviation is an important component. And a lot of our business leaders have corporate aircraft that they use to travel over. So it is still an important element that we've actually got. I would tell you fuel sales is really kind of the metric that industry actually uses for general aviation. It declined, but it came back a lot faster. I think the last time as we were kind of into the summer months, I think they were already back to about 60, 65% of fuel sales in comparison to where they were in 2019 in the summer. And I think they've got pretty close to almost full recovery. We look at potential expansion. We're looking at potentially some large corporate hangars, some large corporate aircraft for general aviation that could be coming to our field. And I know we continue to expand. I think some of the flight schools seem to be doing very well in terms of developing pilots, not only for general aviation, but also for commercial airlines. They're operating not out of our field, but also some of the local fields that are in and around us as well. So looks like GA seems to be rebounding faster than the commercial side is.
Kirk?
Yes, sir. Mike, could you please repeat the percentage of tax return to RDU?
It's about 6 cents on the dollar.
Okay.
So for every dollar you pay as a citizen, when you pay your 7.5%, when you buy your airline ticket, there's 7.5% goes to the federal government. And we have had Airports Council International North America look at probably the top 200 airports. And so they looked at grants received versus taxes paid into the system. And so, you know, we've got that data that shows, you know, over this period of time, about a 10-year period, I think we've looked at, it's about 6 cents on the dollar what we're receiving. We are not the lowest, but we're probably in that bottom quarter in terms of our size of airport. And again, we've illustrated this to the Federal Aviation Administration saying, this is not fair and not equitable. We need to get our fair share. We're not asking for a handout, simply asking for those taxes that have been paid in the system for years to pay for the #1 priority, which is the replacement of our runway. It just makes good business sense.
Okay. Jennifer?
Hey, Michael, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for your presentation. So as far as advocacy goes, do you have an advocacy page for us that you can give us main bullet points that we should be making and give us a list of the prime targets for our correspondence so that we could have kind of a cheat sheet to get started on doing a campaign to communicate with our legislators?
You know, Jennifer, that's a great recommendation. No, we don't have that, but what I do have is something better. I've got a Mary Griffith, and she handles my outreach. And so she helps put these great presentations together, but she's got an email address there. So if you link up with her, they'll be more than happy to try to help direct you in terms of here's the folks we need to be kind of hitting at the FAA or elected officials, and here's kind of the talking points. We may even have a draft letter if you want to use a draft letter to kind of send as part of the Cary City Council. If you want to do that, that'd be great. Or as an individual even, that would be great as well. But again, what we find with the FAA is that the more the community comes forward in support of a project, they have a tendency to want to spend those dollars on those projects, high priority projects the community is willing to support. I think the community would be willing to support that. So Mary would be the best place to go to provide that link for you and anybody else.
I'll get in touch with you. We'll actually use the COG as a resource to be able to disseminate that. I would caution you against writing a sample letter. I think most of the council members here would say that when somebody has a sample letter, they use it, and then you don't want to flood the market with a bunch of the same letter.
Okay.
So, and that's what we do. We get lazy and we send the same letter, and that doesn't do it for you. We want to be sincere and unique in our correspondence, but I'll work with Lee and we'll get something going.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much for your help.
And Steve Rao.
Thank you. First, Michael, I was just curious. One observation is that I'm sure that the India travel has really come down to a halt because of the travel restrictions, but hopefully that'll come back up if we can, deal with the crisis over there. But my question is about the American Jobs Act. You might have already mentioned this, but the $25 billion that's slated to come to the airports. I guess the bills, I mean, how much of that, what's the process of getting that money? And does RDU have a chance? Is it divvied up? I mean, how does that work? Because I just seen that in the fact sheets, but it doesn't really talk much about what that money would be used for.
Yeah. You know, it was interesting. Somebody asked me the question. I think it was a reporter who said, you know, they use the terminology transformational. This is a transformational investment. And so what do you think about that? I said, well, it's only missing one thing. They said, what is it missing? I said, it's missing the 1 in front of the 2 and the 5. It needs to be about $125 billion. To put it in perspective, $25 billion is what's needed by commercial service airports in the United States for 1 year. That program, the way it's broken down, about $10 billion of that goes simply only for terminals. Another $5 billion of that goes simply for the modernization of the air transportation system. All great things. The remaining $10 billion is what's used as part of the airport improvement program, and they have not prioritized how they're going to wind up distributing that. One of the things we typically find out is when they have that kind of money, they divide that up so much that the number one priority, which is runways, has a tendency to be kind of not get its fair shake at the end of the day. I have had lots of conversations with a very powerful elected official, Mr. Price, and talked to him about how I thought that should be divvied up. I thought first we have what we call a give back. So if our pass-through facility charge as a result of getting that, we've got to give back 75% of what we call our entitlement program, which means we give about $8 million a year back to smaller airports. That's the first thing we should get back as part of that new program that they've actually got. And then the remaining dollars should prioritize runways first, is how that should work. He's working hard to try to get that across the line, but as you well know, that is a very complicated process in Washington, D.C. So again, the louder you voice about priority number 1 should be runways, the higher probability we have of getting our fair share of those additional funds that are available.
Thank you.
I do not see any more raised hands.
We have two. Oh, sorry, Chair. We have 2 more hands up that you might not notice.
I have a question for you, if I could. What was your last time the current runways were repaired?
Yeah, so the longest runway, or 10,000-foot runway, we are currently in the process of doing what we call slab replacement. So this is quite an engineering feat. So in April of 2020, we shut that runway down for 30 days, and we replaced 100 slabs that were 25 by 25 by 18 inches. We had to saw cut this out, pull it out, pour concrete back in, did it over 30 days. The previous year, we did another 100 slabs. That runway right now sits at, I think, at about age 34, 35 years. It's got a condition called ASR. For those not engineers, it's basically, it starts to kind of crumble underneath you. 440, Interstate 440 around Raleigh had a very similar condition. And so it needs to be replaced. And so we're maintaining it, but it's really kind of running close to end of life. And we need to build a new runway.
Perfect for advocating for a new runway.
Yes, sir.
Brett Gant.
Thank you, Lana. Mike, can you speak to the involvement that the airport has had with the Go Triangle Transit long-term planning? And can you speak to possibly your 25 or 30-year vision of how you'd like the airport to be served by transit?
Yeah, that's a great one. One thing I think most people don't recognize is there is a 5% rental car tax that goes to pay for, public transportation. So I think right now it's generating $7 to $8 million a year. I think over the past 10 years, it's created about $70 to $75 million. All of that winds up going to Go Triangle to help fund, their long-range plan. I think the planning is done by Go Triangle, but we stay close to their team, monitoring what they've actually got. I think long-term is how do we connect it to the system? I really like the idea of this bus rapid transit system and having the bus rapid transit system being able to connect into the airport so you can rapidly get in and rapidly get out. I also think Morrisville's got a vision of a commuter rail coming through their facility and having a transit-oriented development. There's some elements of that transit-oriented development I don't like, but the ones that I do like is that transit-oriented development would have a connectivity from commuter rail or any other type of rail we put there directly into the airport itself. So I think long-term, you'll see better connectivity from a transportation standpoint for public transportation as we move forward.
And last but not least, Sean McGrath.
Hey, Michael, great to see you again, and thanks for the presentation. Just real quick, I would agree on the comment about canned form letters. Yeah, they tend to not gain as much traction as those that are personalized or especially targeted. My question is a little bit in line with what Brett just asked you from the commuter rail perspective. That's the recent push, in Congress or others that are talking about trying to cease or limit the number of short haul flights less than an hour and a half. That obviously would be a significant strategic headwind for a place like RDU, where a lot of those flights fall into that regime, whether it's business or leisure travel, going to the hubs such as Newark, DC, Philly, Atlanta, even Charlotte. All of those fall within that hour and a half window, and that would be a strategic headwind for challenging federal tax dollar situation from that, wouldn't it?
I think the deployment of that and the dollars associated with having a network that would have a significant displacement of short-range flying in the United States is a monumental task in terms of investment, and I think also infrastructure build that will take some time. I think there will be some version of that will wind up occurring, but I'm not sure to the magnitude that it simply eliminates all short distance flying at the end of the day. I don't know that will wind up occurring. I will tell you, I worked in Chattanooga 20 plus years ago. They were talking about a high-speed bullet train to go between Chattanooga and Atlanta, be the reliever for Atlanta. That was 20 plus years ago. So these things take time. They're large investments. I think there are some good investments out there that could be done, but I don't think it's going to wind up killing all of that short haul service. It may replace some of it, and that may be good for us at the end of the day to have those types of options available as we move forward. But remember, we are a very large landmass in terms of an overall country, and we have lots of different airports we fly to. You won't be able to provide trains to all those places, and so there still will be a pretty vibrant short haul network that will be in the United States, even if you have a vibrant trail service that comes in. But I think both those two things actually complement each other as well. I mean, you can take a train to a plane or a plane to a train. I mean, it works in terms of what's going on. So.
Great. Is there any more questions?
Nope.
If not, Michael, this is fantastic, and your report last year was organized greatly, but this is much better data you're giving us.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate your support and appreciate your time tonight. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, and we'll let you continue with your meeting.
And we'll certainly take Jennifer's advice and work through the COG to promote RDU Airport.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, I'll call on Lee Worsley to consideration of the fiscal year 2020 recommended 2022 recommended budget. We have had a public hearing last meeting. We reviewed it at our April meeting as well. The executive board has reviewed it, and we'll be voting on it later on in our agenda. So, Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. Real quickly, to go back to the RDU presentation, I appreciate Michael doing that. I know he's already left, but Mr. Chair, to your comments and to Ms. Robinson's, we'll certainly reach out to RDU and get some data and talking points, and we'll work with Elena to make sure we get some information out, maybe with the after action report, or we'll send it out to all of you, excuse me, a little bit later. But we'll make sure to do that and provide it to the entire board. So appreciate that presentation. So as the chair said, this is I'm going to give a quick overview of the budget, and do ask the board to consider adoption of the budget resolution during the consent agenda. Next slide. Again, I just want to do a really quick overview. The chair gave a really great summary of sort of the process. We emailed the budget out in mid-April, presented the budget at your April board meeting, and you did have the public hearing. And since we were virtual, the public hearing was held open for 24 hours. We did not receive any comments. We met with the officers on the 5th of May to talk more about the budget. No changes were requested at that time. So tonight we offer the budget, the recommended budget as presented in April for your consideration for adoption. Next slide. Again, as an overview, the recommended budget is about $18.4 million. That's about a 10% increase from the current year's budget of $16.7 million. Next slide. And most of that increase is due to COVID-related pass-through funding that's coming through the Area Agency on Aging. Next slide. Just as a reminder, the recommended budget does not recommend any increases to member assessment or member dues. 39 cents per capita for up to 150,000 population, and then it goes to 20 cents per capita. The county members only pay for unincorporated population because the counties pick up a portion of the Area Agency on Aging budget. And again, just a reminder that our member assessments have not changed since 1996, 1997. Next slide. One highlight that I did want to bring to your attention is health insurance. We budgeted health insurance, and I always do this every year. We budget that at a 15% increase because many times we'll get the quote for health insurance after we send the budget out. We got the quote back a little bit earlier than we had expected, and that was a 0% increase. So we had some room in our benefits budget because of 0% increase in health insurance. So part of the recommended budget is to increase our contribution to our employees' health savings account from $1,404 annually to $1,680 to help employees with HSA eligible expenses. We can handle that with the budget. And once the budget is adopted, we'll go back through the budget to see if there's any opportunities maybe to return dollars back to programs after adjusting our fringe rate. But that's a piece of good news that I wanted to make sure to highlight to the board. Next slide. Just a reminder, this budget actually contains quite a few new positions or changes to positions. We're getting a lot of interest in new programs and new opportunities, and our staff, with your support, is just doing a super job assisting our member governments and other agencies. A data strategy coordinator, an administrative support specialist, an economic development planner 2. Next slide. A planning assistant, a planner 2 in the transportation area, North Carolina Lead Fellow, which will support 2 communities with day-to-day planning, and then a part-time graduate fellow are our new positions. Next slide. Mr. Chair, I just want, like I said, give a quick overview of the budget. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, we have the budget resolution for your consideration as part of the consent agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any questions pertaining to the budget at this time? Again, this is going to be on the consent agenda, so now is the opportunity. Let's hold off the consent agenda. So this is your time to ask any additional questions on the budget. Hearing none, we will move to the next item on the agenda, and it's a request for expansion of the foreign trade zone, number 93 service area. And this request is made from the Southeastern Regional Airport Authority in Scotland County. And I'll turn it over to Renee Boyette and Lindsay Whitson for this presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Raines. Good to see everybody again. I'm Renee Boyette. I think I know most of you guys, but I am the grantee administrator for the Research Triangle Area Foreign Trade Zone, which is also known as FTZ number 93. Tonight, we are coming to you to request an expansion of our service area, to request endorsement of an expansion of our service area on behalf of Scotland County. The service area currently includes 15 counties. Those are the 7 TJ Cog counties: Chatham, Durham, Johnston, Leesmore, Orange, and Wake. The Carter region, which is Franklin, Granville, Person, Vance, and Warren, and then also Harnett, Sampson, and Wilson counties. So if this request is endorsed and the application is approved by the USFTZ board, we would move to 16 counties. So in order to expand the service area, the request first has to go to the FTZ number 93 Rates, Tariff, and Legal Review Board for consideration. From there, it moves to the Triangle J board for endorsement and support. And then the application is filed with the USFTZ board. And additionally, U.S. Customs has to concur that the county meets the adjacency requirements for the foreign trade zone regulations and that they're willing to provide service to the county. So the FTZ number 93 board met on May 19th. At that meeting, we received the formal request from the Southeast Regional Airport Authority, which is located in Maxton, and from the Scotland County Economic Development Department. And the request was for the entirety of Scotland County to be included in the service area of FTZ 93. And additionally, I have received from U.S. Customs, from our customs officers here at RDU, I've received their concurrence that Scotland County meets the adjacency requirement and that they are willing to serve all of Scotland County with any FTZ needs. And I also just recently, I was in the office yesterday and there was a letter waiting for me from North Carolina Senator Tom McInnes, also providing his support of the expansion request. Like I said, if the board agrees tonight to sponsor the expansion request and the application, I will then send a required notification letter to the Scotland County Board of Commissioners, just letting them know that we are making application for the expansion to the USFTZ board. So at this time, I would like to introduce Seth Hatchell. So we're moving from one airport to another. Seth is the Assistant Director of the Lumberton-Maxton Airport and the Southeast Regional Airport Authority. And as also on the meeting is Mark Ward, the Economic Development Director for Scotland County. So they are going to, they have a brief presentation about the airport and about the county and how inclusion in the FTZ number 93 service area will benefit the county. And during their presentation, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box, but we'll also have time at the end for some Q&A once we get through their presentation. So I am going to turn it over to Seth and Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. As Mr. Renee said, my name is Seth Hatchell, and I'm the Assistant Director with the Lumberton-Maxton Airport, which is governed by the Southeast Regional Airport Authority. And I will share my screen so we can show you the PowerPoint presentation that we have ready for y'all today. Can y'all see my screen pretty well?
Got it.
All right. All right, so as I said, my name is Seth Hatchell. I'm with the Southeast Regional Airport Authority. And so I'll give you a little bit about a background of who the Southeast Regional Airport Authority is. And if my PowerPoint will work with me, there it goes. The Southeast Regional Airport Authority is the governing body of the Lumberton-Maxton Airport and the water and wastewater infrastructure within the surrounding industrial park. Currently, it is comprised of 3 representatives from the city of Laurinburg, 3 representatives from the town of Maxton, 1 representative from Scotland County, and the Director of Scotland County Economic Development serves as an ex officio representative, and that is Mark Ward, and he's on this call as well. Here's a picture of the Southeast Regional Airport Authority that was elected to their position in January, In this picture, we also have the executive director and myself, and then State Senator Tom McInnes is also in this picture as well. So a little bit of history behind the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport. It was originally established in 1942 as the Laurinburg-Maxton Army Air Base. At the time, it was the largest facility in the world for training glider pilots. Once World War II ended, the air base and the surrounding land was given to the city of Laurinburg and the town of Maxton to run as a general aviation airport. The land that was surrounding the airport was approximately 4,200 acres, and it was turned into a sprawling industrial park. Currently, there are plans in motion to extend the main runway, which is runway 523, an additional 2,000 feet to 8,500 foot in total. And this would make it the 8th longest runway in North Carolina. And the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport is also the home of the U.S. Army Golden Knights parachute team. It's a little bit of a treat. We get to see them jump Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, weather permitting if the weather's good. So it's always fun to look up and see them parachuting down and practicing and training for their competitions. This is a picture of the air base back when it was first built in 1942. As you can see, when it was built, we call it the Triangle, and there were 3 runways. But as soon as the war ended in 1945, the air base was given to the city of Laurinburg and the town of Maxton to run as a general aviation airport. And they said, well, you don't quite need 3 runways. So immediately they closed 1.5 of the runways. So currently we do have our main runway, runway 523, which is looking to be expanded. And we have half of runway 1331, about 3,500 foot there. This is a picture of the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport Terminal. It's not quite the Raleigh-Durham that we just had the privilege of listening to, but this is the terminal building. And so this view that you would see right here is right after takeoff. So if you took off runway 23 and you looked right, you would be able to see the letters that spell out Laurinburg-Maxton on the apron, and then the terminal building right there. And I talked a little bit about the water and wastewater structure. If you look to the top right-hand corner of the picture, you can see our north water tower. It's about 500,000 gallons, and that's the treatment plant right there. This is our main runway, runway 523. We will be expanding it an additional 2,000 feet to make it the 8th largest runway in the state. So we're very much looking forward to that. It was fully rehabbed in 2011, and so we are privileged to have a newer runway, but this is asphalt, whereas Raleigh-Durham's would be concrete. Some of the facilities we do have on site is we do have a 80 by 100 corporate hangar. That's for our larger aircraft and corporate traffic. And then we just finished building a brand new set of T hangars. And so that is for your smaller airplanes, that for your general aviation traffic. Our industrial park that surrounds the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport, we're proud to boast that we have a very diversified tenants. We have more than 13 different industries that employ over 1,000 full-time positions in the industrial park. All necessary utilities are on site: water, sewer, electric, fiber, optic, and natural gas. And of course, the water and sewer is provided by the Southeast Regional Airport Authority. The park is served by several modes of transportation. We have U.S. Interstate 74 that cuts directly through airport property. We also have CSX rail that serves some of the industries out in the industrial park. And then the airport itself also serves the industrial neighborhood. We have corporate clients that will fly in, and they'll have the plant managers pick them up and carry them over to the plant to do inspections and a morale with the employees and that sort of thing. In the industrial park, the Southeast Regional Airport Authority still owns approximately 1,000 acres remaining for prime land for economic development. And surrounding the industrial park is a vast amount of farmland, so there is room to expand the industrial park. This right here is a picture of the industrial neighborhood. To the top right-hand corner of the picture, you can see US 74 cutting across through the property. And to the bottom right-hand corner is a warehouse that is actually owned and operated by the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport with the Southeast Regional Airport Authority. We have a couple other industries in this picture. This right here is a picture of Corteva Agriscience as a company, and they're on the bottom left of the picture. To the right, we have a company called Meritor. And then this right here, the warehouse that is kind of towards the top of the picture, is a recent expansion at the industrial park. And it's a new branch of Corteva Agriscience. It's about 170,000 square foot warehouse space. And to the very top of the picture, the massive clearing out there is actually the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport and the triangle that I spoke a little bit about earlier. This is a more zoomed in picture of Corteva Agriscience. You can see their main office building with the green roof right here to the left of the picture. This is Meritor, a little more zoomed in with their parking lot and their main facility. They actually just recently announced a $3 million investment and expansion with about 22 jobs to be added at this facility. So we're excited for that and looking forward to what that might bring for the industrial park. Here are a couple more industries that we have. To the left, we have the Woodard plant, and on the right, we have railroad friction. And towards the top of the picture, we have Mount Air Farms, and they are actually the most recent addition to the industrial park, Mount Air Farms. They just purchased approximately 322 acres from the Southeast Regional Airport Authority and some additional acreage from the town of Maxton for their facility. The water and wastewater plant that we do operate with the Southeast Regional Airport Authority, the wastewater treatment plant is a 2 million gallons per day plant. And currently we have about 1 million gallons in excess capacity, so we have plenty of room for growth. We have 7 active wells, 4 on the north end of the airport and 3 on the south end. And we have 2 elevated storage tanks. We have one that's 500,000 gallons and another that's 150,000 gallons. This is a picture of the wastewater treatment plant. Again, it's 2 million gallons per day. And then this is our 500,000 gallon tank on the north end of the airport. And we got a little bit of free advertising on it. So Laurinburg-Maxton Airport. So a little bit about the economic output that the airport provides. And thankfully, Michael was also able to touch a little bit on this for RDU. But the North Carolina Department of Transportation, the Division of Aviation, does do an economic impact study every 2 years. And so in 2019, it was estimated that the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport had approximately $95,430,000 in economic output. So it's the 13th largest economic output of all 72 airports. And it's important to note that numbers 1 through 10 are commercial service airports. So they have regularly scheduled flights departing, whereas the Laurinburg-Maxton Airport is a general aviation airport. And also to that note is this output is the largest that is not currently in a foreign trade zone. In Scotland County as a whole, there are 5 different countries that provide direct foreign investment. And those countries are Bulgaria, Canada, China, Japan, and Turkey. And then there's 34,550 citizens in Scotland County. Of those, 13,616 are in the workforce, 5,553 in the workforce are in manufacturing, and 5,176 are in governmental health care.
Let me stop you right there for a minute, Seth, because the questions will probably come up. Those are the workforce of our citizens that are working in the community, but that does not take consideration our workforce that's working in other communities outside of Scotland County.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Moving on to this slide, we have a picture of North Carolina, and then highlighted in green is Foreign Trade Zone 93. And to the south of that in red is Scotland County. And as you can see, we are adjacent. We're touching the south end of Moore County. And if Scotland County were to be incorporated into Foreign Trade Zone 93, all of US 15501 from South Carolina to Virginia would be incorporated in the Foreign Trade Zone. And this has the potential to open up some monies from North Carolina Department of Transportation for highway funding and repairs and maintenance. And I'm on if you have any questions about the Southeast Regional Airport Authority and our request. And Mark Ward is also on behalf of Scotland County.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? One hand has been raised. Kirk?
Yeah, just a question. What is the foreign trade zone that's in South Carolina? Because I understand we have our northeastern counties that are aligned with southeastern Virginia.
There is a foreign trade zone in Dillon, South Carolina. That's part of the inland port. When Dillon received that inland port with CSX, that would be the second option for us to take. If we were not able to be included in this FTZ, the next logical fit would go to South Carolina. The only difference with that is, and I don't know the number, But going across state line, getting their state legislation to approve it and some political power is a little bit harder to do. And of course, we also don't want to be, we're just being totally blunt and honest. We're considered redheaded stepchild of North Carolina anyway, because we're so close to the South Carolina line. A lot of places don't pick up our news. So if we go even further and join South Carolina, well, we might as well succeed from North Carolina and just say we are South Carolina. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to be in that group. You know, let's just be totally honest. You know, we need to be part of North Carolina, even though we're on the line. So we'd rather not go that way.
And Mr. Smith, to your point, the Port of Virginia, which is in the Norfolk area, does come down and serve the northeastern part of North Carolina. They are the closest FTZ to that area. The northeastern North Carolina does not meet the adjacency requirement for any of the zones in the state. So that is one reason that the Port of Virginia is able to come down and do that. Since Scotland County does meet the adjacency requirements and Customs has agreed to serve them, we think they would be a great fit with our zone program.
I would also add to that is Customs is already servicing Raleigh Customs is already servicing a building in Scotland County now as a bonded warehouse. Since we were not part of an FTZ, the client that went in that facility needed to switch everything over from a free trade zone to a bonded status. And the officers from Raleigh came down, inspected the property, and they allowed that client to be bonded through their organization.
And we also have Tom White, who's chair of the FTZ board, on the call, and I think Rebecca, who's on the board, is here as well. And if those two or any other board members have any comments, I'd ask you just step in, introduce yourself, and provide your information.
Renee, I'd like to reiterate our sincere gratitude to Mark and Seth, and also Joanne Gentry, their colleague, who made a terrific presentation last Tuesday, May 18th, to our FTZ board. I was also thinking while Seth was speaking that there's a native of Laurinburg who's no longer with us, named Terry Sanford, a great UNC graduate who went on to a rather stellar career as our governor, U.S. senator, and sandwiched in between there as president of Duke University, which I know Mark is very fond of. But he was a paratrooper in World War II. So I got to believe that he's probably looking down, smiling right now on this presentation, tying us together here in the Triangle. I really believe that.
This is Rebecca Salmon. I'll just add that the Foreign Trade Zone Board enthusiastically supported this when it came before our board, and I think it does provide some neat opportunities to have the entire corridor there across the middle of the state. I think that's a really neat calling card for the Foreign Trade Zone in the future, and it's a really nice fit to see so many people exploring ways to promote economic development in North Carolina, and this just adds to that the robustness of our state. So I would encourage everyone to support this.
Is there any more questions? Elaine, is there any more hands up that I did not recognize?
Nope.
So Chairman Raines, if I may, just want to make sure you understand what everybody understands what my ask is for tonight. So in your agenda packet, there was a resolution of support to endorse the application to expand the service area to include Scotland County. And my ask is that this board, the TJ Cog Board of Delegates, vote to adopt that resolution and authorize staff to pursue this designation. And of course, the vote will be taken via the consent agenda.
And if so, we'll be voting on that on the consent agenda, hopefully a few minutes from now. So, any more questions? If not, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and it's on the equity dashboard resource. And Lindsay Winston will introduce Alex Halloway, our speaker.
Hi, I can just go ahead Or Lindsay, did you? Yeah, I was gonna introduce Alex, but with the interest of time, I'll just let him take it. Yeah. Well, nice to meet everybody. My name's Alex Holloway, and I'm AmeriCorps service member here at TJ-COG. Been serving with the COG since September, and so just wanted to take some time to share with you our equity dashboard, which is a new addition to our website. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Trust everybody can see that. And so, yeah, on the website, our equity dashboard is linked. It's the first tab here currently, but if you go to the About section, the About section, and then underneath Equity Inclusion, and then the Equity Dashboard is how you can address it. And this is a resource that we want to develop to highlight and the equity measures within our region, as well as provide tools for people to be able to go about addressing those. Just for a quick context, back in September at the Equity Summit, a lot of the presenters provided attendees with different tools about how to visualize and address different equity measures. And so from that, we want to create sort of tools within our region specific that we could use to be able to do that. And so that's sort of where the components come from. And key to addressing equity is just being transparent with that and being able to show that in a comprehensive way. And so being able to have different visuals and infographics, as you see here, was very important to that. As well as, again, as I mentioned, just being able to demonstrate the different best practices in our region. So that way people can learn from each other and we can create the best practices and policies within our region to address different components. And so how the website works is that we currently have 7 different sort of topics related to equity. And if I can add this list and how the website is currently is in no way exhaustive. There are a lot of different best practices and measures, but this is just a starting point. But as you can see here in the green, we have different sort of topics related to equity. So you can see here the racial wealth gap. And then underneath, we highlight a different community that is doing a best practice that we feel contributes to that. And so there are about 7. And as you kind of scroll, you can kind of see the different topics such as increasing access to workforce. So how do we address unemployment rates? How do we make home ownership more accessible to a wide variety of people in our communities? Understanding the different ways our communities are growing and adapting. And so how do we be intentional about inclusive community planning and engagement, as well as just supporting cost burden individuals in terms of housing within that. And so just to kind of highlight one of the different best practices. So you can see here, this talks about cost burden homes. So homes that are where more than 30% of the household income is going towards home costs and utilities. And so some of the best practices that we listed here include like the Owasso Affordable Outreach Program and a similar program, the Sanford Community Assistance and Relief Emergency Support Program, where people, when they're paying their water bills, can tack on an additional sort of donation, whether that be on a monthly occurrence or a one-time donation. And then those extra donations go to support lower income households where they might not be able to make that payment within a given month or so. And so it highlights those sorts of resources as well as some sources and links. And then using these different infographics, we created this with the website Infogram, and they're very interactive. So you can see this highlights cost, burden, home ownership, occupied households, and it goes by those that are earning less than $20,000 and those that are earning more than $30,000. And you can kind of see the differences in terms of what percentage of those households are cost burden. You can kind of toggle between the region and the state. You can toggle between counties. And so you can kind of see the different metrics within that. And then some of the infographics have a couple of different pages to them, including this one. So the previous slide was home ownership rate, and this current slide is renter occupied rate. So it's a very interactive tool, and it's something that we're hoping to continue to build out over the coming months and the years to come. We initially shared this dashboard at a coffee and collaboration meeting we had back in March. And I believe some of the people on the call were at that. And that was a great opportunity to kind of think about different ways to really sort of talk about the different challenges. And one thing that, comes up is, it's still a challenge of, trying to understand and represent the different types of voices and experiences within that. A lot of these metrics are broken in by race, but even within race, there's just so many different ethnicities and experiences. And so how to kind of build upon that is a challenge. And so I guess I just want to be able to share that with you, but also open it up for discussion, kind of see what your thoughts were on this dashboard, what your thoughts were and how it could be improved and moving forward. And any advice you might have at this moment. And I know we're running on time, so be happy to open up to questions and discussion now, but you can also feel free to email me. My address is at the top of the webpage, aholloway@tjcog.org. But with that, I will open it up to discussion. And I don't know if it's best to kind of leave the screen up or if I should just exit out and share, but feel free to open it up.
This is an excellent tool, and with North Carolina Future that we addressed a couple meetings ago, it's a way to learn more about your community than you ever thought possible.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may, so we put a link to the dashboard in the chat, and as I was talking to Alex a couple weeks ago, we really do welcome your feedback and input on this, and so it may take you, a day or two maybe to look through it, but would love to know where you may think there's some gaps or ways to improve this. We also want to make sure that this is a resource for your local governments. So if there are ways to, and maybe other partners too. So if there's ways that we should be advertising or getting this information out, we'd love to hear it. But I just wanted to thank Alex, and I know a few other folks worked on this too. But it's been really fun to see Alex put this together and do a great job. It's one of those projects where it started out and I had something in my mind, and then he showed it to us. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. So we've enjoyed having Alex as one of our AmeriCorps members, and more importantly, a team member of Triangle J. So I just wanted to recognize his hard work. So thank you, Alex.
Appreciate it, Lee. Thank you.
Again, thanks, Alex. And there are a few board delegates that have joined us since we had the roll call. And so if you were not at the roll call, Elena needs to know who you are so that she can call on you when we do have some roll call votes. And I see Butch is with us, and I don't know who else has joined us, but
Kevin Drum.
And Pamela Baldwin.
Chad Seri from Wake Forest.
Pamela Baldwin from Pittsburgh.
Gotcha. I got all three of you, so thank you.
Thanks.
Did you hear Kevin Drum as well?
Yes. Yep.
Thanks for joining in. It's having more than just the quorum helps our agenda and our performance of what we're doing. So thank y'all for joining in. And I know everybody's got busy schedules, and it appears that in our June executive committee and hopefully future meetings that we'll have the opportunity to see each other in person. So there's more opportunities in the future to be part of a great group. So at this point, we have our nominating committee report, and past chairman Jim Crawford is in line to present this report. Is Jim with us?
He has not joined.
Okay. Rebecca Salmon, who is the chairman 2 years ago, has agreed to make this presentation. And so we will start with the presentation, and I'll go over how to vote if there are additional nominees.
Fantastic. Thanks, Don. The nominating committee met, and we deliberated, and we are so proud to be able to present this incredibly strong slate of officers for your consideration this evening. Our currently serving members of our executive committee have agreed to move up. So we would like to nominate Kathleen Ferguson from the town of Hillsborough for chair, Mark Wilson from the town of Archer Lodge for first vice chair, Deidreana Freeman from the city of Durham for second vice chair. And we are pleased to nominate Ken Marshburn from the town of Garner to be our new secretary treasurer. And I know that they have big shoes to fill. Don, you have been a wonderful chairperson, and we thank you for your leadership so much during this very turbulent year. Who knew that you would become the master of being able to chair over online meetings, but you've done a fantastic job. But I'm pleased to present this slate to the board for their consideration.
And we're open for additional nominations for each of these positions. So if there is additional nominations for chair, if anyone would like to make a nomination. Again, this is what the nominating committee role is, to make recommended nominations, but if there's additional nominations. Is there any additional nominations for first vice chairman? Hearing none, we'll move to the second vice chairman. Moving on to secretary treasurer. So Rebecca, if you'll go over the names one more time, and we'll move forward with our nominations.
Certainly. So we are nominating Kathleen Ferguson from the town of Hillsborough to be our new chair, Mark Wilson from the town of Archer Lodge for first vice chair, Deidreana Freeman from the city of Durham for second vice chair, and Ken Marshburn from the town of Garner for secretary treasurer. And again, thank you so much for agreeing to step up to serve.
And Rebecca, will you make this nomination and we'll request a second to the nomination?
Sure. I would like to formally nominate this slate of officers to be our next, for next year, for the 2020-21 fiscal year.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second to this motion?
Larry Smith, a second.
Thank you. And Elena will now have a roll call vote.
And I apologize. I think I misspoke. I meant for the 2021-2022 year.
We understood that.
Okay, so I'm going to do roll call the same way. The only difference is only one vote can be submitted per community. So if you are both delegate and alternate are here, just the delegate can vote. I don't believe we have that circumstance, but if there's both of you from your community, only one. Aberdeen?
Wilma Laney votes aye.
Andrew? Apex?
Aye.
Archer Lodge?
Aye. Mark Wilson.
Thank you, Mark. Benson? Broadway?
Thomas Bill from Broadway votes aye.
Thank you.
Elena, I think you were muffled on that last one. Somebody was unmuted, so you may want to repeat. Sorry.
No problem. Carrie,
Jennifer Robinson votes aye.
City of Durham,
Deidreana Freeman votes aye.
thank you.
City of Durham.
Fuquay-Varina,
Larry Smith votes aye.
Garner,
Ken Marshman here. I guess we'll vote aye as well.
vote for yourself.
Looks like
Hillsborough,
Kathleen Ferguson and I.
you too. Holly Springs,
Sean McGrath, aye.
Johnson County,
Butch Lauder, Johnston County votes aye.
thank you, Butch. Sorry, Heidi. Durham County,
This is Heidi. I vote aye. Thanks.
of course. Sorry about that. Nightdale,
Latacious Morris, I vote aye.
Lee County,
Kurt Smith, I vote in the affirmative.
very much. Morrisville,
Steve Rao, I vote aye.
Pinehurst,
Kevin Drum, vote aye.
Pittsboro,
Pamela Baldwin, aye.
Princeton,
Princeton votes aye.
Rollsville,
Ronnie Kern votes aye.
Sanford,
Rebecca Salmon votes aye.
Selma,
Byron McAllister, aye.
Wake County, Wake.
Was that Wake?
Oh, yes, that was Wake.
I'm sorry, it blipped for me for a minute. Susan Evans votes aye.
You're not a problem. Wake Forest,
Chad Siri votes aye.
Glendale,
Joe DeLoach, aye.
Wilson's Mills,
David McGowan, aye.
and there's one that Anger,
Aye.
and Benson. Is he still? All right. Will we have all yes votes pending Benson?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Well, congratulations. I think this is unanimous, and congratulations to the new slate of officers. I got full confidence, and I know everybody well. And Lee, you're going to have a great team working with you.
Yes, sir. Congratulations. Look forward to working with everybody. Thank you.
And if we have time at the end, we'll have everybody can make a comment. And next on our agenda is the fiscal year 2020 Transportation Demand Management Program funding and opportunities. And Sean Flaherty has the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, I'll keep this to under a minute. We can, I guess, Elena, we didn't get those slides in, no problem. But the first item, oh, there it is. The first item on the consent agenda is the 14th year of hopefully approving the resolution required by NCDOT's now Integrated Mobility Division for TJCOG to seek permission to apply for funding for, again, our 14th year of this program. Again, transportation demand management is aimed at reducing vehicle miles traveled with the end goal of reducing congestion and improving air quality in the region, understanding that supply not only costs much more than incentivizing alternative commute options, but is also an alternative to the reality that we cannot build our way out of the growth that we're seeing in the Triangle area. The budget figures are there. We have never been required to provide a cost share for TJCOG's administration of this program. We've actually reduced the ask of NCDOT for the grant that we give to our partners, such as Go Triangle and other local service providers across the region, but have been able to increase the number of local service providers to 15 while decreasing our ask of NCDOT, understanding their budget constraints and challenges that they've had over the past fiscal year, which I think is a good faith effort on TJCOG's part. So that'll be the first item on the consent agenda. And the next slide, just very quickly, wanted to alert everyone to another opportunity. The Mobility Options Resiliency and Efficiency, or MORE, through TDM Act will provide $250 million per year for up to 5 years to support TDM strategies. And this just underscores how far ahead the Triangle region has been with transportation demand management, and how the rest of the country really is picking up on this as a key, if not necessary, strategy for transportation planning moving forward. I will drop some information in the chat right here for how you can reach out to elected officials. There is a template for doing so, but hearing the discussion from the RDU presentation, perhaps we can work at TJCOG to provide something on the region's behalf. I believe Elena may have already sent something out on this item through the Week Ahead e-newsletter. If not, we can provide information moving forward. So thank you so much.
You're muted, Chair.
Sorry about that. Somebody probably wants to mute me more than I am muted. So there's a resolution in our consent agenda for this item, and with that, is there anyone that wants to move an item away from the consent agenda? The consent agenda includes the minutes of our April meeting, the FTZ resolution, and the fiscal year 2020 budget resolution, as well as the transportation demand presentation. So is anyone desiring to move the issue off of the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
Don,
Yes.
this is Ronnie Kern. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ronnie. Is there a second?
This is Butch Lawler. I'll second.
Thank you. And so, Lana, you have the opportunity to do another roll call.
Woohoo! All right. So we all know the rules. Aberdeen.
Wilma Laney votes aye.
Thank you. Anger.
Bob Smith, aye.
Apex.
Brett Gant, aye.
Archer Lodge.
Mark Wilson, Archer Lodge, aye.
Thank you, Mark. Benson.
Jerry Medlin, aye.
Broadway.
Thomas Beal, aye.
Carey.
Jennifer Robinson, aye.
City of Durham.
Deidreana Freeman, aye.
Thank you much. Durham County.
Heidi Carter, aye.
Favorina.
Larry Smith, aye.
Garner.
Ken Marshburn, aye.
Hillsborough.
Kathleen Ferguson, aye.
Holly Springs.
Sean McGrath, aye.
Johnson County.
Butch Lawler, aye.
Yeah.
Latacious Morris, aye.
Lee County.
Kirk Smith in the affirmative.
Morrisville. We can't hear you, Steve, if you're.
Oh. Did you call me? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I did. Morrisville, sorry.
Steve Rao from Morrisville. My Wi-Fi cut out. Aye. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Pinehurst,
Aye.
Pittsboro,
Pamela Baldwin, aye.
Princeton,
Don Rains, aye.
Rollsville.
You say Roseville?
I did. Sorry if I'm cutting out.
That's okay. This is Ronnie Kern, aye.
Thank you, Ronnie. Sanford,
Rebecca Whitehoff Salmon, aye.
Alma,
Byron McAllister, aye.
thank you, Byron. Wake County,
Susan Evans, aye.
Wake Forest,
Chad Sari, aye.
Wendell,
Joe Deloach, aye.
and Wilson's Mills.
David McGowan, aye.
Anyone I missed? I don't think so. Unanimous vote.
Thank you, Elena. Again, this has been a great meeting, and we've got some really important information to share with you in the next few minutes. And the executive director has a lot of good information that he's going to be sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about a few opportunities and thank a few folks for their really great work. You know, one of the things that we take pride in at Triangle J and across the regional councils in North Carolina is that our mission is to serve our local government members, but we also work with each other to make sure that if one COG needs a service, that we can step in and maybe provide that service so that we're not duplicating and that we're all serving our local government members. So a couple of examples of that I wanted to highlight. The first, and we'll send this along in the after action report, but there was a really great article in the Fayetteville Observer a few days ago about the good work that we did in partnership with the Mid-Carolina COG to do a housing study for the city of Fayetteville. And I really want to say a lot of appreciation to Erica Brown and Catrice Hale, who are on our housing team that did really great work for Fayetteville in developing the report. But there's another story to this that the newspaper didn't talk about. Fayetteville has not been a member of Mid-Carolina COG for probably close to 20 years. And the Mid-Carolina COG has been doing a lot of great work over the last year to really rebuild their organization and to serve their members. And they've made a lot of great strides in doing that. And we were certainly happy to back Mid-Carolina up. And I got word from their executive director about a week ago that membership for Fayetteville is in the budget for the city of Fayetteville for the Mid-Carolina COG. So that's really great news. And we love seeing all the COGs do better and succeed. Similarly, I've talked a little bit about our support with Mid-Carolina COG to support the town of Spring Lake. The town of Spring Lake in Cumberland County is going through some difficult times, and we have been supporting them with Mid-Carolina COG and working on their financial situations. They have gotten to the point where they've gotten all their audits current again. The local government commission has been extremely complimentary of the partnership and the work that's been done in Spring Lake. And I think it could be, we've learned a lot from that could help us with future opportunities. And so I wanted to highlight that as well. And that's led to the state, that among a lot of other things, has led to the state really recognizing the value that COGs bring to the state and to the local governments. And so I'm really excited that the governor has included $16 million in his proposal for the American Rescue Plan funding from the state to go to the COGs. So possibly $1 million to each COG to support local governments as they decide what they're going to do with the American Rescue Plan. This is a huge win for us. We have not been recognized by the state in this way in a long time. And the governor's office, the pandemic recovery office have all basically said that they want to look at distribution of the funds and through the regional lens. And so it's just, I'm really happy to be the chair of the COG Association right now because I've been included in weekly meetings with the Pandemic Recovery Office. The COGs are doing really on the ground work to support local governments as they meet some of the requirements that are needed to start receiving the funds. And so more to come on that, but it's a really great opportunity for us and just really excited for the support that all of you give us in, making a case that COGs need to be more involved in state issues. And really thankful that the state is beginning to recognize that and really leaning on us very heavily. The other thing, the chair alluded to this, we have an executive committee meeting coming up in June, and we do plan to hold that here in the room I'm in right now, in our large meeting room. And we will plan on, we take July off, but we'll plan on having the August board meeting in person. We will also provide a virtual option if anybody would like to take that, but we will plan on meeting in person in August. Our offices will open back up to the public on Tuesday, June the 1st. And so part of what we were doing today is working with the town of Cary, who's our technology provider, to think about how things might look a little different when we come back, and really excited. We do a great job with providing IT options for the folks coming to our meetings, but I think we're going to see even more options once we open up. So a lot of great things. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to give an update.
Great, Lee. And in addition, I'm also chairman of the forum, which is the advocacy group of the delegates for the council and government. And we have a legislative week scheduled next week that will start on June 2nd. And the governor's proposal must have the consent of the General Assembly. And in the governor's proposal, the League of Municipalities and the County Commissioners Association also has some budget items that needs the consent of the General Assembly. And as soon as we get the itinerary of the meeting next week, everybody will have an opportunity to join us in the General Assembly next week. But it's important that our COGs are growing, our roles are growing, and there'll be additional responsibilities or opportunities coming along in the next year from the American Recovery Act and broadband and water quality and other things that we've been an advocate for the past 4 or 5 years. A lot of the infrastructure money will go towards planning, and the COG's role will be very important in putting that together. So thanks, Lee, for working on as an advocate for all the COGs. And with that, we are mostly on time. And so it's around the region. And the question that we have, and Elena, if you'll help us on this, is what are the few priorities for the communities surrounding the American Recovery Funds and funding opportunities? And Elena, if you would start out with our A through Z in our local governments. But this has been a great boost to projects that we could not fund without this money. So if you'll do a roll call.
Yeah, I'm happy to go alphabetically, and if there's certain folks that want to share more, have more of a passion to share, feel free to raise your hand and I'll pick on you first. But I'll start with, it's kind of going alphabetical by last name. Pamela Baldwin. Anything you'd like to share?
Well,
feel free to say skip. Feel free to say skip.
Yes, but basically we were working on our budget, which was very, very difficult. We've had to increase, possibly we'll have to increase water and sewer rates, which is unfortunate, but we're trying to also, there is PFAS and PFO, everyone knows about that, in the Haw River, which is coming from downstream cities, or actually from companies downstream. So we're working on trying to clear that with special decontaminants and things such as that. So that's just a short overview, but we look forward to getting that water. The water is clean in terms of the state regulations, but of course the state does not monitor PFAS and PFO. So basically we are certainly trying to get all of that in place.
Thank you very much. It looks like there's a repeat the question request. Feel free to share if you just have something you'd like to share. The question was if you wanted to talk anything about your American Rescue Funds plan, what you're talking about with your community, but you can also just give a general update. Byron McAllister.
We are definitely looking at infrastructure with the recovery funds. Particularly on the sewer side for us, a lot of repair to prevent I&I with our sewer system. So that's the majority of our talk as far as those funds are concerned.
Thank you very much. It looks like Brett is eager. He's got his hand up. Brett?
Yeah, thank you, Elena. Yeah, so in Apex, I'm not sure everybody knows about this, but when the law passed, Congress had estimated we get $17 million based on population, and we got, with that Treasury guidance that came out, we went down to 5 million. So us in Huntersville fell into this entitlement versus non-entitlement situation. So anyway, we're hopeful that gets resolved, and because that's pretty big difference. I mean, pretty gigantic difference. But anyway, I think the stormwater part of that, the guidance that said we could work on that and improve that part of our town would probably be where we spend the money, whether it's 5 or 17 million.
Yeah, and just if I can jump in, Brett, I've had some really good back and forth with your finance director over the last day or two, connecting him with the pro office and making sure he understands where the applications need to go. So appreciate Vance reaching out. We've been working with your staff on some of that stuff.
Yeah, there was a freak out, I would say. I mean, it's extra money, but that's a lot of difference. So anyway,
yeah.
Thank you, Lee, for that input.
Yes, sir.
Heidi Carter.
We really haven't started discussing as a board of commissioners.
Not a problem.
Yet. Unfortunately, I wish we had. Thank you.
Thank you. Latacious Morris.
As the newbie here, I'm going to skip.
That is fine. Skips are welcome or allowed. Don.
We are looking at infrastructure. Primarily, we're looking at flood mitigation or flash flood mitigation, and our community building is antiquated, and we're seeing some of that money will qualify to match some money through the Rural Center, the USDA Rural Development to build a new community building. So we got a lot of infrastructure things to do. So thanks.
Thank you. Deidreana.
Good evening, everyone. Hold on, I was trying to see if I can turn my camera on, pull my hair down a little bit. Good evening. I would say that we've been having our discussions mainly around how well our staff has been able to manage through COVID. And I think the cuts we made made a huge difference. And I think the COVID funds have come in really handy. And we're talking about a green and equitable bond, and acknowledging that some of our legacy neighborhoods, historically Black neighborhoods, have been left out of many bonds and many infrastructure plans. We're trying to figure out how to prioritize them in a way that's equitable. And I would say that the chance to really dig into some of the infrastructure things like sidewalks and paving, road paving, those things build jobs and they keep the economy actually rolling. And so I'm looking forward to a chance to bring that forward. I don't know that it'll come this year, but maybe next year. And as we do the planning, it does definitely give us some hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Robinson.
Hey, we have not decided how we're going to focus those dollars, so I'll go ahead and skip for today.
Awesome, thank you. Mayor Medlin. I will come back. Just raise your hand if you, or unmute, either way. Joe Deloach. Joe Mundell. Okay. Kathleen. I think
we have, yep, there we go. We have discussed, we've earmarked, and apart from replacing some ancient fire hydrants, some targeted repairs with wastewater.
Thank you. Ken?
Yes, I think preliminarily we have looked at some IT issues, but it's still very early in the process, and we're still sorting through some of the regulations and limitations that will come with this money, I suppose. So that's all for now.
Thank you. Kevin Drum?
We had a meeting of the Tri-Cities, and kind of exciting that we're thinking of ideas of how to work together, Aberdeen, Southern Pines, and Pinehurst, maybe on connectivity as part of this. But the village of Pinehurst, is known as an old town, 1895, but it's really wasn't incorporated until 1980. So we have the problems of a young 41-year-old community of stormwater. So I would say that our focus will be on stormwater. And we got hit pretty hard culturally. We have a harness racing group that comes down every year that didn't come, and it financially is pretty devastating, but it's also scary to lose. You take for granted these harness horses coming down every season, and now all of a sudden they might not, so some of the cultural issues, our privately funded library, public-private partnership got damaged through this, and we're going to take over the library. And stormwater is a really big issue because we're a young community, and we're finding with stormwater, sidewalks sometimes go above them. So I would say that is a good summary of where we're at, but I thought it was interesting that the cultural hit that we took on some of our cultural programs, and not sure if we'll be able to get funded or not.
Thank you, Kevin. Joe, would you like to go? You were frozen, I think, so.
Well, of course, my daughter FaceTimed me at that exact moment, so that's how it goes. We're kind of along the same lines. We're just waiting on a little more clarification before we really did a deep dive into it. But luckily, we've been able to handle a lot of things through our budget this coming year, paving, stormwater, new town hall, that kind of thing. But 2.5 million, and we're excited. So we'll see, but we're going to dig in on that here shortly. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Thank you. Kirk?
Just a highlight, our manager is having us work budget right now, so we've been pretty heavy on that. But we did have a breakfast with the mayor of Sanford and the city manager yesterday, and we are going to provide, or we're going to host 3 municipalities, going to be Lee County, Sanford, and Broadway, put our heads together so we can avoid duplication of effort. But personally, I know broadband is an issue in a large part of my county. So that's where we're standing. We're going to be starting in June, July, working that issue.
That's awesome. Butch?
Well, I didn't ever think you were going to get to me. So I'll say we're working on in the middle of our budget now. So working on that, and we're trying to work together with the towns to do some planning for the future. And the next thing after the budget's done will be, how to spend our funds, and hearing some other conversation here about working together, because Johnson County is going to be infrastructure. But to me, I just brought it up to look at regional approach to water and sewer in Johnston County. So maybe using some of these funds to actually do something to that, to work with the towns, because we've got a ton of growth already here and a ton more coming. So some good ideas to use that money on and work with some of the folks on here to work to make it happen. So.
Awesome. Love your background. Love that you're in a field right now. Mark Wilson?
We haven't decided exactly where the funds would go, pending what type of restrictions will be placed on the use of the funds. However, we have been in some informational talks on a public sewer system for Archer Lodge. And we're also in the process of building a park, as if the funds can be used in the park or not. We haven't established that yet. But that's about what we've done thus far.
Great. Thank you so much. Ronnie?
Thank you, Elena. We're like everybody else. We're just trying to flush through the particulars and figure out, where we're going to go with it. We did finish our budget, so that's going to give us more time to spend on that. And also, we've been doing a new LDO that we'll have finished, has to be finished by July 1, and that has sucked up a lot of our time, both time and meeting time with that. So we'll be able to jump more onto this. I feel like it's like many others that have stated on here. It has a lot to do with infrastructure. Our stormwater is something that we've been talking about for 2 or 3 years. So I think this is an opportunity to maybe to crash on that a little bit. And also from standpoint of walkability, that's a big goal of ours, to have good walkability on the sidewalks and greenways and things like that. If it can be used for that, is one of the things we're looking at. And I think lastly is facilities. I know some of you guys mentioned facilities, and we have completely ran out. We don't have, I gave up my office a few weeks ago so somebody could have office at town hall. So we have completely run out of facilities. So that's something we'll have to do. Well, we can use any of this funds for that or not. But that's kind of where we are. I do have one question for Lee. Are you keeping the beard, Lee?
I just might. I don't know. I don't know.
Good on you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's funny. Real quickly, I was in the office, like I said, today, and saw one of the aging staff members. I hadn't seen her in about a year, and she actually had to look for a second, and she didn't recognize me. So I might.
Well, welcome to the club.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a distinguished club if you're in it.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Ronnie. Sean McGrath.
Yeah, thanks. We just finished up our budget workshop last night, so we got into preliminary discussions about potential options for that. So thankfully blessed with some great economic development and strong continued growth here in Holly Springs. I think it's like everyone else said, it's going to be infrastructure, and part of that is stormwater, but trying to keep up with our growing and increased needs for wastewater, sewage, all that stuff with that comes with a rapidly growing community. So the dollars will be well utilized, I'm sure, on all that infrastructure if that's what it plays out to be. So thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Smith.
Well, let me get this straight. Okay, well, here at Adger, we are looking at using the majority of the money downtown. I'm sure y'all have never run into 1-inch galvanized water pipes and terracotta sewer pipes that are just in pristine condition anymore. We're going to probably spend the majority of our money, probably $1 million downtown, to try to get the infrastructure up to date. But at the same time, we're going to build a new town hall, a new community center, and start a 110-acre park and refinance some of our debt, with the result that we're not going to increase taxes. So go figure. My beard, I think, will come off also after the pandemic. I'm not quite sure when that'll be, but working on it.
We'll have to have beard status updates at all of our meetings. Everyone can report on their beard.
Should we do a press release on those two beard status?
Maybe.
I don't know. You could get an early start of November.
There you go. Breaking news.
Breaking news. All right, Steve.
Thank you. So the town of Morrisville is receiving about, well, first of all, we're really excited about our bond referendum coming this fall. We are having our elections, and it's going to be on parks, transportation, and our public safety, public works. And we're going to get about $8.4 million. About $4.2 million is going to be spent between May and July, in this budget. And then the remaining will carry over to the next year. So about $1 million is going to go to replacement revenue for parks. And then we've got about $1,045,000 that we're going to allocate to a small business recovery program. And also we're going to hire a fiscal recovery officer. And I'm trying to work with our council to actually create a small business office or liaison that could actually help the small businesses that are opening up. Many have had a really hard time, but we're seeing some new businesses. But I think just someone that can navigate them through where they can go get, for example, restaurant revitalization funding and things like that. So we've got our staff doing a great job of really figuring out where those funds are going to be earmarked, and hoping we can get some of these things going. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Susan Evans.
So, Wake County, we're going to be receiving approximately $216 million, for which we're very thankful, but we have a lot of things to look at. Like so many of you said, we've been up to our knees in our regular budget and focused on that, but our staff has brought us a proposal that we're going to consider next week for what to do with the first quarter of that. And our initial approach is to address enhancing and supporting our public health operation. We have throughout this entire pandemic been offering free testing at the county level and free vaccines, and all the administration of that for a county as large as ours is a big deal. So we're going to use some of the funding to continue those operations, and in specifically targeting outreach to vulnerable populations, because We now finally have 67% of our adult population has one vaccine at least, but that's not enough. And so, we have certain groups who we're going to be targeting. So that'll be part of it. We've talked about extending some business loans that we were able to offer to small businesses. With the CARES Act funding that we got before, we'll be continuing some of that, with some of the restaurant owners, barbershop owners, and folks that really have struggled through this pandemic. And we're been asked to consider giving, between $4 and $5 million to support our hospitality industry here in Wake County, primarily to the Raleigh Convention Center and the PNC to help them rebound. So in addition, right off the bat, I know we're going to direct some money to our food insecurity efforts. One of the things the pandemic really shined a great light on is, unfortunately, how many people in our county are struggling with having enough food to eat. So we will be using funds to continue to address that, as we have been. And also, we already knew we had an affordable housing issue, and the number of folks who are potentially facing homelessness in our community has just grown exponentially during the pandemic. So I know that we will be using a good amount of our funds for affordable housing initiatives. But that's just me shooting from the hip about some very preliminary conversations. We will be leaving it to our staff to bring us some recommendations of how they think we should spend all that money, and it's a great problem to have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Tommy Beal.
Yeah, this is Thomas Beal on Broadway. We finished our budget, and it looked like the money we get will probably be spent on water and sewage to improve it. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. And finally, Wilma Laney.
Okay. We passed our budget on Monday, and we do not have to raise taxes, or we don't have a lot of fees out there. So I feel really good that we have that money, American Rescue Plan. So because we can definitely use the money. I think everybody can, but we tried to. We got the balance. We got the budget balanced. We got everything done. So we do have things to do. So we do have that money, and it'll come in very handy.
Thank you, Wilma. Kirk, do you have your hand up?
Yes, Rebecca wasn't here, so I'll put a plug in on Business North Carolina with the article on Sanford and Lee County.
Lots happening in Lee County these days. That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you. A lot of good things, and I'm sure someone in the COG is writing notes that we're going to be advocating for all these local governments. So, Elena, if you would just, I know it was in our newsletter that we sent out, but the finalist for the sandbox is the reducing waste in construction supply chain. Do you want to just go over that 30 seconds or a minute or whatever?
I will not say I'm an expert and can talk about it any more than what you just said, but we will be starting all of that work in June. So we're having some early conversations with the organization that submitted that challenge, which is Circular Triangle. And we've pulled in our natural resources and resilience team, who already have some really great ideas about how we might pull in the universities into this conversation. So there's a lot to come. So just keep an eye out. We'll definitely have updates at meetings soon. So thanks.
Now I'm opening up a can of worms here by asking Kathleen to speak for just 30 seconds or a minute, but if the new officers want to make a comment, and then we'll have a motion to adjourn if there's no other business.
Well, I'll make it brief, but thank you, Dawn. I feel the love. But seriously, no, I am honored to serve, and I very much appreciate it. I'm excited about the year that's coming up. Lee highlighted we have accomplished so much as a cog within and what we're doing within our region, and TJ Cog has a lot to be proud of how we are providing leadership among state cogs, and Lee, you deserve kudos. And with that, there is so much more we're going to be accomplishing. So thank you. I am excited to serve with my fellow officers, and thank you for your confidence.
Mark?
I appreciate the nomination and the confidence you showed in me and voting for me. And I'm looking forward to serving in the first vice chair and with Kathleen and all the rest, and with Lee. And you might say it's small town boy makes big in TJ Cog.
Did Joanna?
I'll keep it really brief and just say I'm excited as well, and whatever I can do to support our incoming chair.
And Ken?
Yes, thank you, Don. And I too look forward to serving. I must say that as Secretary Treasurer, there's much I probably need to learn, but I'll continue to serve if you don't make me do a roll call by Zoom. Thank you. That's it.
Elena's got that down pat. So
good.
But hopefully no more virtual meetings. But well, we will have virtual meetings, but sparingly, I hope. With that, is any other business? It's been a great meeting, and I appreciate the leadership of everyone as a delegate, and also the COG. Y'all do a great job, and it's we got one more meeting to go, but I've certainly enjoyed my leadership as chairman. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that, and Don, on behalf of everyone, thank you for amazing leadership for this past year and your service.
Thanks.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I've heard, Lena, you got that? Okay. We'll do this by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Look forward to seeing y'all again.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Well,
Bye.